things that's really got much more noticeable during lockdown is the need to belong, and the fact that we've all slightly lost our tribe. So some of the themes I normally talk about, I'll go through a few of them now and tell you how I've adapted them. I've always talked about belonging. Some of you will know that it's very much, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the various ways of cutting up the sort of human psyche and our basic needs within our species, belonging is hugely important. And suddenly we're in a world now where we're not quite sure where we belong. And we've been put into isolation with virtual contact rather than real contact. So even though we're going through a collective experience, we're going through it as individuals. And one of the things I offered at the very start of lockdown, when everything I had fell out of my diary, every corporate gig and every comedy gig, in the space of about 48 hours, just under a year ago, everything fell out of my diary. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? First, I got COVID, so I was ill for 6 weeks. So that was a good use of the first 6 weeks. And I thought, well, what shall I do? I've got very little going on. And I went back to doing executive coaching, which I used to do lots of for years and years. And in this case, I did free private coaching for people. I did 1 hour, one-off pro bono sessions for people in the creative industries. I did 100 sessions with 100 different people. And there were two common things that came out of it. One was that everybody felt stuck. Every single person I spoke to used that exact phrase, I don't feel I can be as productive as I want. The other thing that everyone had in common, literally to a T, was that everybody thought everyone else was doing it better than them. Everybody was coping better than they were. So I talk, even in the normal world, about imposter syndrome, the fear of being found out. I'm sure you all know what imposter syndrome is. Michelle Obama brought it into sharp relief when she did her book tours for Becoming. I've been talking about it for years, haven't made much money. She obviously needed the money, very happy for her. So imposter syndrome is something that I talk about. And by the way, imposter syndrome isn't actually a fear of being found out. Imposter syndrome was actually defined by two female psychotherapists back in the 1970s to describe individuals with an incapacity to internalize their own success. Individuals with an incapacity to internalize their own success. That was where imposter syndrome came from as a term. And when we think about being imposters, we're thinking about our inner dialogue versus other people's outer dialogue. So it's very easy for us not to realize that most people have the same nagging doubts we all have. And research would tell us that it's about 70 or 80% of us that suffer from a reasonably significant degree of imposter syndrome. By the way, if you're thinking never suffered from it, think I'm pretty good at this game of life, that same research would say you're probably either a narcissist or a psychopath. So well done, you'll be being ushered out of a big home in Washington anytime soon. So one of the things that is important when we think about where we are now in the world is to think about how we might connect again. And it's my belief that commercial excellence comes from human connection, and that it's very hard to generate commercial excellence without a capacity for outstanding human connection. The only thing I think that made me stand out in all my years at board level, at ITV, at Viacom, those big aggressive corporations, the only thing that I think I did that made me stand out was the way in which I could engage with people and the commercial result. My talks in terms of motivating people are very much a celebration of how flawed we are and how things are not okay. They give people an amnesty on pretending everything is okay. And I'll look at various different things in terms of what data there is out there about keeping people, well, what data there is around well-being, some really interesting statistics at the moment, as I'm sure you know, and depressing statistics about how much people are struggling with mental ill health. So it's a combination for me of looking at the soft skills and the more business leadership type framework. So what you can do in terms of practices within a company, in terms of infrastructure and what you do with staff, but also what you might do in terms of managing your own inner dialogue around that. But the starting point is, I think, to acknowledge that collectively we're not doing very well, and that if you're sitting there on your own feeling that that is the case, it's far better to start to get to know that before you try and change it.